Hello, hello.
I'm Savannah.
And I'm Elysia.
And this is Burden of Proof.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I hope it wasn't anything like the Robertson family. Although the board isn't up to date and
It's not. I'm sorry. That's my bad.
It's okay. I hope you enjoyed Danielle Locklear.
Yes. It was great.
Yep, thanks. I thought it was a interesting one.
It made me mad, but
oh yes,
it was a good
everybody
case.
was infuriated.
Sometimes they be like that.
Mm-hmm. It's the nature. It's the nature of the beast. What we do here.
Yep.
Yerp.
Okay. So we have one piece of business that's not really our business, but
it crosses over into the territory of our business.
Yes. As so many of you know, and some of you are co-listeners, if you will.
We share custody of you.
Yes, exactly. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
We share custody of many Gore Report listeners. Some of you probably saw on social media, but we're just making this announcement just in case you're wondering where they are and you aren't on social media or did not see it before things got shut down. Unfortunately, Gore Report has ended production as of now. Gage and Ray both have plans to release solo shows in the future. And as I'm sure you're feeling right now, we're very saddened to see their show end, but we do wish both of them success on their future projects, and we will absolutely be supporting each of them however possible. So,
absolutely.
You know, we don't know what that looks like yet. We'll see what they have in store, but we just wanted to give y'all updates.
Yeah. We have a couple people who have, emailed or reached out and said that they don't have social media, and we just wanted to make sure that if you're not online there, that you weren't, completely ghosted while they kind of figure out their next steps individually. So,
yep. Sad to see Gore Report end, but
yes,
I think they both could do phenomenal things separately as well. So
super excited for the future for them, and we're excited that you guys are here with us.
Yes, and we actually do have a few Patreon shout outs.
So Mariella, I feel like we may have mentioned you last week. I don't remember.
Mariella joined as a free member, but now she has upgraded to
Mariella,
the $3 tier.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. And also shout out to Tonewood Nursery.
Yeah. A business page.
I
was excited about that.
I know, that's a first for us.
Yeah. And then we had a couple free members join.
Yeah, joining that Patreon poll pick every month. Gail and
Katie,
I can't read the board. I need new glasses. It's too far away. Gail and Katie, welcome to the party. Make sure you guys are joining that members only Facebook group for just our patrons. That's super fun.
Yeah.
And you can take advantage of that and get to vote in our case polls as a free member.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. And that concludes our news for today.
Now we may begin.
So are you ready?
I don't even know the name of the case.
You don't even know.
I know nothing.
All right. This one's interesting. Today I'm going to tell y'all about the tragic death of Yolanda Holmes, a 45-year-old Chicago native, small business owner, and philanthropist. She was beloved within the community. She owned a salon where she would often, have like special events in the community to offer haircuts and things like back to school things for kids and all sorts of stuff. So she was well known and loved. She's universally described as generous and loving, and she was first and foremost that way with her only son, Qawmane Wilson. Yes, you looked confused. I just want to know
I want to know how it's spelled.
That's the most interesting part. It's actually spelled Qawmane.
Qawmane. I thought there would be a U in there.
Me too.
Cool.
While we don't know the entire story between Yolanda and Qawmane's father, we do know that She raised Qawmane alone because his father ended up in prison. As a single mother, she would often bring him to hang out in her salon as he was growing up. So, all the stylists got to know him. And according to some of the stylists working for her, there wasn't a thing in the world that Yolanda wouldn't do or give to Qawmane. Many of them admired her for her success, both as a business owner and committed mother. And even as a young adult, when Qawmane grew up and moved out, Yolanda helped him financially so he could pursue his dream of becoming a rapper.
I knew that's what was going to come out of your mouth. Listen, I'm not going to shame the rap game, okay? I like some rap music.
Mm-hmm.
Namely, I am a white woman. I love me some Megan Thee Stallion, okay?
Yeah.
So I can't shame the rap game.
No. But in this case,
maybe a little.
While we could debate whether that was the right thing to do, one thing that is clear is she loved her son and likely believed it was the right thing to support his dreams.
Yeah. Go, Mom.
Her life wasn't entirely revolving around Qawmane, though. Yolanda did date and was in a long-term relationship. And by September of 2012, she had reconnected with that former flame. His name was Curtis Wyatt. On September 1st, the couple went out and then settled in at Yolanda's apartment for the night. Then at 5:01 a.m. on September 2nd, Curtis called 911 stating he had just fought with an intruder who shot Yolanda. Yeah, we're diving right in.
Okay. I have to make a point before we get really into the nitty-gritty of this.
Okay.
He has 2 first names.
True.
Curtis Wyatt.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that I had, and I needed to tell you that's
I needed to point that out.
I needed to say it out loud. 2 first names. Secondly, what was he wearing when the intruder fight happened? Because that's my biggest fear. Like, when I go to bed every night, my cousin said it once. Somebody asked, like, oh, do you sleep naked? And she was like, no, what if there's a fire? Yeah. So every night when I go to sleep now, I think to myself, am I prepared for what could happen in the middle of the night?
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I should sleep with sneakers on.
Well,
I don't.
No.
Because I can't even sleep with socks on. But, like,
yeah.
I have to know do you know what he was wearing?
I don't know. Of course, the reenactments show him with, like, pajamas on.
Okay.
Or, like, a t-shirt and, like, flannel pants. But honestly, we don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, it was a long shot question, but okay. Now I'm prepared to get into there was an intruder and Yolanda was shot?
Correct.
Okay.
So when detectives arrived to the uptown luxury apartment, they immediately took note of the building security measures. There were several security cameras, and everyone must have either a fob or a code to enter the building. And how it works is that if someone is coming, like the resident would give them a code to put in the pad, and that automatically calls a landline to their apartment, and then they can hit a button and let the person in. Okay. As the detectives entered her apartment, they also noticed there was no sign of forced entry. But what they saw beyond the doorway can only be described as bloody. There was blood spattered and streaked through the hall. One area in particular indicated someone's head had been sort of like smashed into the wall. There was some hair and tissue in the blood. There was bloody footprints leading into the bathroom where the water was still running, and it appeared someone had tried to like wash up or rinse away the blood. And in the bedroom, they found Yolanda lying on her back, like halfway in the bed, and her feet were on the floor.
Okay.
Detectives say that the room was in complete disarray, as if there had been a brawl. Once they check out Yolanda more carefully, they find that she has stab wounds to the chest and had been shot in the head twice.
Okay, I have thoughts. I I don't know. Should I give my thoughts or should I?
You can give your thoughts.
Okay. As a true crime buff,
Mm-hmm.
stab wounds, pretty personal. Secondly, in a brawl, being shot in the head twice. If you're shot in the head once, maybe, but twice feels really accurate and like very intentional versus like just trying to break into a house.
You're not wrong. But you'll see why as our story unfolds.
Okay.
So I'll leave it at that. I don't want to give it too much away too soon.
Okay.
They also found 2 more bullets. One in the wall behind went through the headboard and into the wall behind the bed. And one that went into the floor somewhere near the bed.
Okay. That tracks a little bit more.
Though they did not find the knife used to stab Yolanda, they did find an older handgun lying on the floor and it was broken.
Okay. I'll keep that in my back pocket.
Yep. Detectives also found 1 earbud with just a portion of the wire still attached lying on the floor. So like the wire had been ripped away, cut, something, and that was left. Of course, detectives suspected that the attack on Yolanda was personal, given the overkill nature of both stabbing and shooting her. And they obviously looked at Curtis first, but during his initial interview, he wasn't making a lot of sense, according to them. He claimed that he was sleeping next to Yolanda when he woke to a man shooting in the bedroom. When he jumped up and across the bed to tackle the guy, it turned into a brawl that spanned most of the apartment until the guy got away.
Okay.
He wasn't able to give a lot of details to explain stuff, but he had a head wound. Okay. So they didn't want to push him any further as the EMTs were treating his wounds, including a head injury. Detectives sent him to the hospital under police supervision until he was well enough to talk again. They doubted his version of events, though, because they questioned how anyone would have gotten into the apartment without them waking or letting them into the apartment.
Right. I mean, you very clearly explained the complicated system, like the security system in place for letting people in. So, and I've been to apartments that have that same system. So it is not something that's easy to get around.
And even if they managed to get into the building door, the main door, because somebody was exiting or something and they just like made their way in, how did they get into the apartment?
Somebody had a
without breaking the door. And it's a high-rise complex. So there's not like, it wasn't an easy way. I think they were on the 14th floor or something.
Yeah.
So they're like not scaling the building to get in through a window.
So whoever did this has a fob to get in the door.
Yeah.
Or
they were either let in or they had a way to get in.
Right.
For sure. So as they continued to process the crime scene, Qawmane arrived at 5:56 a.m. Okay, so less than an hour after Curtis called 911. And he attempts to get into the building and they stop him, of course. He explained to police that he was there to see Yolanda Holmes, that she is his mother. A detective was called down from the apartment and he informed Qawmane that Yolanda had been killed. And he says that Qawmane's reaction was that he looked very puzzled, and then he broke down crying. Pretty much what you would expect.
Yeah, standard.
He asked the detective why, and they told him they didn't know yet, but that they were working on it. Later that day, Curtis returned to speak with detectives and was able to give more details. He said that he and Yolanda had gone out the night before, returned to her apartment for the night. They were intimate before falling asleep, so it is possible that he was in the buff.
In the nude. I'm just trying to imagine him fighting off an intruder, okay? I'm not.
It's really funny.
Weird.
No, you're not. And here's the thing. I don't have it in my notes because I just was like, well, is that important?
I think it is.
But you probably are correct, because in the court documents, it does specifically say that during the brawl, the intruder tried to grab his testicles. So it's entirely possible.
Okay. So,
or likely. I should say it's very likely that he was nude.
Poor Curtis.
Yeah.
I mean, the man is trying to defend his territory.
Correct.
And his woman. And his nuts.
And his junk. Yeah. Yeah. So Curtis claimed that he first woke up to Yolanda's phone ringing and her speaking to someone. She told him it was her son, and Curtis said, then I just went back to sleep because, okay, your son's calling you. The next thing he knew, he was abruptly awoken to gunshots, and he opened his eyes to find a man standing in the bedroom near the doorway with a gun pointing at the bed. He said that he jumped out of bed and began fighting with the guy from the bedroom down the hall. He described the man as being about 6 foot tall and weighing approximately 200 pounds. And the truly weird part for detectives was that Curtis claimed that once they fought through the apartment and Curtis was down for a moment, he got away from the guy temporarily. He went to grab a knife from the kitchen butcher block.
Mm-hmm.
And then the guy just walked out and left him.
Okay.
He also admitted that he was the one that tried to clean up after, but he couldn't remember exactly the order of everything. He was still jumbled up a lot.
I can see you being gonna wash my hands.
Yeah. So Curtis claimed Yolanda was the love of his life. So detectives asked, well, if you're not sure what order stuff happened, why would you wait to call 911? And he had no explanation, as he just was like, I don't know. I had a head injury.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly what happened. They definitely questioned the plausibility of Curtis's story, and it didn't help that he wasn't super cooperative. When he couldn't answer questions, he would say he didn't know, but then when they pressed him, he would kind of cop an attitude and say things like, I don't know, you're the cops, you tell me.
Hey, that's not helpful, my guy.
Yeah, not great. So while it wasn't helping Curtis any, they still didn't have any hard evidence against him. So he was free to go, and they had to keep investigating. They ended up with 84 pieces of evidence to process, almost all of which were blood samples or things covered in blood. They found no prints on the revolver left at the scene, but they were able to confirm that it was the gun used to kill Yolanda. Unfortunately, they weren't able to trace the gun to an owner. Okay. So that is sort of a dead end.
Right.
They were also never able to find the knife used, so they turned their focus on canvassing the building and surrounding areas. When no witnesses were uncovered, they moved on to scouring the surveillance footage from security cameras and digging into Yolanda's life a little more. They interviewed Yolanda's sister and Qawmane. Neither of them could give much information as far as oh, she had enemies, or oh, maybe this person had something to do with it. But they did let them know that she dated and she had been with Curtis for about 5 years, and they had broken up in the spring. They didn't know that she was getting back together with him. Okay.
I know what that means in girl words.
Right.
That means they would have been upset if they knew that they were getting back together. So she was keeping it from them.
Correct. When the detective asked Qawmane who he thought could have done this, he indicated that he did believe Curtis must have had something to do with it because there was no sign of forced entry, and he knew his mom would never let anyone she didn't know inside the apartment. So he believed, yeah, there may have been somebody that came into the apartment, but Curtis probably let them in.
Okay.
Yolanda's sister told detectives that Yolanda had broken up with Curtis because of an altercation at a party, I believe the beginning of May. And now we're in September.
Okay.
While at the party, Curtis grew jealous of Yolanda's behavior with a male friend, and the two began arguing. When her family members intervened, Curtis got violent, breaking items, including a television.
Okay.
He reportedly threatened to go get his gun and kill them.
It's not looking great, Curtis Wyatt.
Yeah. Luckily, the police showed up, and they actually arrested Curtis at the time. And then they broke up. So obviously this would explain why Yolanda had not told anyone that, oh, by the way, I'm getting back together with, the guy who threatened to kill my sister and brother-in-law. But it also created more suspicion around the likelihood that he was responsible for her death. So when they searched through the surveillance footage, they saw a man wearing a dark hoodie, which was up around his face, carrying laundry and a detergent bottle, enter the building around 4:30 a.m. Now, let me just give this disclaimer. Some of what was in the court documents versus some information given in news reports and the docuseries that's in my sources was pretty different.
Okay.
So I'm not going to say that mistakes can't be made in court documents, but I tend to lean towards trusting the court documents versus a production, especially. So I'll just say he got in the building. Now, from the footage itself, you can't totally tell if he used a fob to get in or if he pushed in the keypad, like a code, to get in. Okay. So at this point, they just know he got in without issue. So they thought, okay, maybe he's a resident at first glance. Mm-hmm. But then they notice he leaves at 4:46, just 16 minutes later, and he appeared to have a different hoodie on. As he exited, another young man had just entered and held the door open for him. Detectives were curious if the two of them knew each other, but they didn't appear to. Other than the guy entering holding the door open, there was no, obvious acknowledgement of each other. Detectives also felt that if the hoodie-clad man was involved, it raised the question, why did Curtis wait until 5:01 a.m. to call 911 when that guy just left at 4:46?
Right. So we've got 16 minutes or 15 minutes.
15 minutes, yeah. They recalled that he admitted to washing his hands and feet, but unsure of the sequence of events. So they thought, okay, did he really spend 15 minutes washing his hands and feet before calling 911?
Yeah, I don't know.
So again, red flag on Curtis. Detectives worked with the building manager to identify that resident who came in and let the hoodie guy out. The building manager said that his name is Michael Parker. So they interviewed Michael, and he stated that he was just out with friends that night, and he was getting back in the early morning hours after he's a young adult. They do that. He said he noticed the guy leaving seemed kind of shady, but he didn't notice any blood on him or anything super unusual otherwise. So the guy left and Michael didn't think anything about it after that. When detectives conducted a background check on Michael, they found he had no questionable history and was just a college student living with his grandmother in the building. And so detectives were still left wondering if Curtis knows the man in the hoodie. At that point, they were limited on what they could do, so they asked Curtis to take a polygraph, and he agreed. Unfortunately, deception was noted on every single question.
Okay.
So it didn't turn out to be very helpful.
Right. I mean, because you can't use...
Yeah.
If every question is deception, then it's okay, well, what was the baseline?
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, and polygraphs in a courtroom are very hit or miss anyway.
Yeah. They still had nothing solid on Curtis, so again, they let him go. And with no options left, they repeatedly watched the surveillance footage, trying to spot some kind of clue, something they may have missed. Finally, one investigator noticed that when the man walked into the building, he had wired earbuds in his ears, but when he walked out, there was only one, and then there was a wire with nothing.
That's weird.
It looked like it had been cut.
Yeah.
Excited at this potential lead, the detectives moved the earbud to the top of the list for items to be processed for DNA. Meanwhile, Yolanda's family and friends held her funeral and grieved their loss. Qawmane was reportedly very quiet and withdrawn at the funeral, which is not
weird.
Not weird at all. But what was a bit shocking to detectives was that Curtis did not attend.
Well, that is weird.
He had sworn that she was the love of his life, so they questioned,
"Where are you at, bro?
Why would you not have gone?"
I mean, in his response, can I guess his response? I think it's going to be, well, her family and I didn't always see eye to eye, so I didn't want to go.
Yeah. To me, it's actually, I mean, I can see detectives questioning it, but it kind of makes sense. Like, she had not told her family that they were getting back together, and the last time the family saw him, he was being arrested for threatening to get his gun. So he probably thought, I don't want to show up and then cause drama.
Like, which I understand.
Yeah.
I really can't get a feel.
I know, right?
Like, you keep mentioning Qawmane, so I'm keeping my eye on him.
Yeah.
I don't know who this headphone guy is.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now you know why I like this case, why I chose
it's good.
it.
I also just, in general, though, I tend to trust the girlies. So if, like, her family wasn't a huge fan of Curtis, it's like, that says something. So we'll see. I'm very wishy-washy.
Well, this is probably going to make you even more.
Okay.
So despite all the officers' suspicions, Curtis stayed in touch with detectives, calling almost every day to ask if they had found the person who did this.
That can go either way.
Exactly. They're like, it's very unusual for a suspect to keep calling, but also, are you calling because you genuinely care and want to know if we found the person, or are you calling to see what we know?
Right.
To see if we're getting closer to you.
Are you inserting yourself like a killer does, or are you inserting yourself like a
family member?
Yeah.
So they were a bit thrown, obviously.
I'm getting whiplash.
They turned some of their efforts to Yolanda's ex, Qawmane's father, who was in prison, as I said earlier. But as it turned out, he was in prison for a double homicide.
The plot thickens.
However, they found no evidence that he had anything to do with it.
Yeah,
it didn't appear that he had any outside contacts that would have matched the description of the guy in the hoodie or anything like that. So 2 months had gone by, and they finally got the results from the DNA samples on the earbud. While they were able to identify a profile, they were not able to identify the contributor because they were not in the national database.
Of course not, because this just can't be easy.
All of the blood samples throughout the apartment belonged to Curtis, and Yolanda's blood was contained to the bedroom, indicating that at least Curtis was being honest about, she got shot in the bed, and then he jumped up and had a brawl with the person. The fight or the struggle. That's like the first big thing that shows, okay, maybe Curtis is at least being honest, maybe because initially they questioned, did him and Yolanda brawl through the apartment? And then he just finally got the final shot when she ran back into the bedroom.
Yeah.
So now we know that's not the case. The investigation all but came to a full halt despite the multitude of pieces of evidence. Frustratingly, months went by before investigators found their next break, when they finally received Yolanda and Curtis's phone records.
Yeah, I was going to ask because she was on the phone, allegedly, when he woke up the first time.
Right.
So who was she talking? Well, she said it was Qawmane, but was it really?
That's a good question. So Curtis's record showed absolutely nothing. He was not using his phone at all that night.
Okay.
It turned out that Yolanda had 2 phones in her name, and on one of those lines, there was a lot of activity just before, during, and right after the murder. And then it stopped abruptly. Obviously, Yolanda wasn't the one using the phone whilst being murdered. And not only that, but the calls were all to the same number. And then there were no calls to that number again at all.
Okay.
Weird, right?
Very.
So, of course, the first person they want to ask about this phone line is Qawmane, as it would make the most sense that he would know about her phones, lines,
Who was she talking to? Yeah.
If not be the person using that line. So this is one of those things where I feel like detectives need assistance.
Yeah.
To notice
yes,
the finest of details.
Right.
All right. So bear with me. They called the number that Qawmane had left with them, but never got any answers. So they reached out to Yolanda's family, who told them that since Qawmane received the settlement from her life insurance, they had not heard from him and they did not know where he was.
So we didn't notice that earlier?
No, keep the phone number in mind, okay?
Okay.
He was not at his last known residence, and the building there appeared to be going into foreclosure, so they couldn't just go canvassing, like asking different people in the building. So more time passed, and detectives grew concerned that Qawmane's disappearance had something to do with Yolanda's death, but didn't know what. Like, was he a part of this? Was he harmed by the same person? Like, they don't know. In October of 2013, more than a year after the murder, detectives visited Curtis Wyatt again. He had left Chicago to live with his, some records say cousin, some say friend, I don't know. He went to live with somebody in the suburbs. To their surprise, this guy was of similar height and weight as the suspect in the hoodie. So, one of the detectives asked him to submit a DNA sample to compare to the unknown one from the earbud, and he was cooperative. He agreed. And it was not a match.
Okay.
So, they're back to square one. As they scoured back through the entire case, they realized they missed a very important detail. And this is why they need assistance. The phone number that Qawmane had given them during his interview, but then never answered once he disappeared, was in fact, dun dun dun,
the same number.
The second line in Yolanda's name that they're trying to figure out who, like, what all these calls went to during the murder. This meant he was likely the person making the calls during the time of her murder. So, they were eventually able to trace the number called during that time to a man named Eugene Spencer. It turned out that at some point, Eugene lived in the same building as Qawmane, and he also had a bit of a criminal past. Unable to locate Eugene, they put out an investigative alert on both he and Qawmane. And all that means is that if anyone in law enforcement encounters either of them and runs their names through the system, they'll get an alert that they are to notify the person that detectives are looking to speak with them. And then they are also to notify detectives, hey, I have located this person. This is where they are, etc.
Yeah.
In November of 2013, Qawmane was found during a traffic stop when his friends were pulled over driving a separate vehicle from him as they were following him to a performance. Okay. He sees them get pulled over. He waits. He watches. And eventually, like when it's taking too long, he approaches the officers to see what the problem is. And they explained, well, their plate on this vehicle does not match the vehicle. It's
Okay.
not actually registered to this vehicle. And he says, that's okay. That plate belongs to me.
Still not okay.
So they say, okay, well, then I need your identification. They put him in handcuffs and they put him in the back of the patrol car because they're like, you need to stay here while I get my car and run your name and everything. So they run his name. They see the investigative alert. They call the detective who filed it. And then they explain to him, okay, we're going to deal with this plate thing, but this detective needs to speak to you about your mother's murder. Are you willing to go down? Now, do with that what you will. But supposedly to the police officers, he said, yes, I will go with you to speak to this detective. According to them, he did so voluntarily. He just happened to be in the back of the patrol car because they had been looking into who he was. When asked where he had been, Qawmane claimed that he had been trying to get a hold of the detectives the entire time.
Where? Prove it.
Well, they are still in the same spot.
Yeah, you left.
You moved.
And stopped answering your phone.
And got a different phone.
Yeah.
So they asked him about that phone number that he had given them. And he admitted the phone line was his number under Yolanda's account. When they said they identified the outgoing calls from his number to a Eugene Spencer, Qawmane denied knowing Eugene. They called him out, stating they knew Eugene used to live in the same building as him. And then Qawmane said, oh, well, I didn't know his real name. I only know him as Boo.
Yeah, I mean, I figured that's what you were going to say, that he didn't know his real name.
He went on to say that everyone was scared of him because he was a big tough guy and supposedly had killed a dog in the neighborhood or something. So detectives showed him a still shot of the man in the hoodie entering Yolanda's building, and Qawmane said, I know you already know who that is. That's Boo. They pushed him for more info until one of the detectives point blank asked him, how did he get into your mother's residence? And Qawmane surprised them with, quote, man, it was supposed to be a robbery.
Whoa. Okay. Okay. Keep going. I don't know what to say to that.
Yeah.
That's like a random way to admit, after all this, you're just going to throw that out there?
Mm-hmm.
That feels weird.
It was. So they asked to get what? What was he supposed to rob her for? And he said to get money. He repeatedly swore he didn't have anything to do with Yolanda's murder. He said he loved his mother and would never do anything to hurt her.
She supported your rap career, man.
Yeah, she supported you financially because you're just not really working.
Right.
You're doing rap gigs when you can get them. So he went on to say that he stopped speaking to Boo after the murder and that he was scared that Boo would kill him as well. He swore that everything he did was at Boo or Eugene's direction. This sparked an intense search for Eugene, right away, who was found at a family member's home and taken in for questioning. Detectives went through a series of questions in which Eugene admitted he knew Qawmane and he heard about his mom's death, but wasn't very forthcoming otherwise. Then, when they asked if he had ever been to that building, he said, oh, you mean the laundry? They asked him what happened, and Eugene claimed that when he went into the apartment, some guy he didn't know tried to kill him.
Curtis. Okay.
Correct. It didn't take much else to break him, though, because when they asked who shot Yolanda, Eugene paused and replied, I'm not going to lie. Then proceeded to admit he shot her, but claimed he was trying to shoot Curtis in self-defense. When detectives pressed him again, saying they didn't believe him, he was then suddenly very eager to talk. He claimed that he got into the building using a code that Qawmane gave him to call up Yolanda so she would let him in. Qawmane specifically told him, just cough when she answers so she will think that it's me because I spoke to her about 40 minutes ago and she's expecting me.
Okay.
Throughout the questioning, Eugene swore that he had no idea the woman was Qawmane's mother. He said that he was offered $4,200 to commit the crime, but was only given $70 and had not seen Qawmane since.
Right, but this is all allegedly done at your direction.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Detectives questioned Qawmane again, and though he attempted to dodge responsibility, he admitted he gave Eugene the gun, detergent, and clothing. He also admitted that he got a third person involved. Qawmane had asked his girlfriend, Loriana Johnson, to give Eugene a ride downtown to bring a gun which was hidden in her apartment that she didn't know about. It wasn't her gun, and she had no idea that he had hidden it there. Nevertheless, she agreed to do so.
Okay.
So now they had her to question as well. And between the three of them, detectives pretty much learned the following. So, once Loriana arrived to Qawmane's apartment with the gun, he took it from her, he wiped it down, and at some point he's talking to Eugene and she's must be like in the next room or away from them. She's not involved in the conversation. And she says that she hears Qawmane tell Eugene, take everything. She did not see him give Eugene the clothes, detergent, or gun, so she assumed that once they go to leave, the clothes and detergent that she sees him carrying was his. She didn't know that Qawmane set it all up.
Okay.
She also never saw Eugene with the gun or a knife. But she did understand by what little she did hear that the intent was to rob someone.
Right. She's like, I can use context clues.
Yes. So she agrees to drive Eugene to Uptown, but she's following Qawmane to the destination with Eugene in her backseat.
Okay.
Once there, she stays in the car while Eugene goes inside. He entered the apartment, went to the bedroom where he fired shots, but he did not see Curtis lying there because it was so dark. Qawmane was on the phone with Eugene, and after the shots are fired, he asked, "Is that bitch dead?" So Eugene got scared that if he missed her, because he couldn't even see if he actually hit her, that then he would have to, I guess, I don't know, he wouldn't get his money or he'd have to face Qawmane. So he says that he went back into the room and started stabbing Yolanda. Now, this is where the stories differ because Curtis always swore that he heard the shots, then jumped up and attacked, okay, or out of self-defense. But it's speculated that maybe Curtis may have rolled onto the floor when the shots were fired.
Yeah.
And that he didn't jump up and start defending himself or Yolanda until Eugene re-entered the room to stab her.
That makes sense. Because, I mean, I feel like it would take that long for you to process what's going on.
Right.
You know?
Right. Well, and I mean, we all think that we would be some big defender, but when there's shots being fired, and you don't know where they're coming from, it's dark, I think that's human nature to just get down.
I agree. Yeah.
You know? So Eugene said that he believed he stabbed Yolanda 3 or 4 times, and he does claim that that's when Curtis
Okay. So that makes
jumped
sense.
at him.
Yeah.
As they fought, Eugene hit Curtis in the face and head with the gun repeatedly so hard that it came apart and he dropped it.
Yeah. So that was the broken gun.
Yes.
Well, that would explain his disjointed behavior after, because that's
Yeah,
really
he wasn't-
traumatic head injuries. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, he wasn't just punched and like
Right. He was
thrown into the
pistol
wall.
whipped.
He was pistol whipped multiple times. So when Curtis ran into the kitchen to grab a knife from the butcher block, but saw that Eugene walked out, he became more and more disoriented, and they believe that he passed out temporarily.
Yeah.
Eugene got back into Loriana's car, not wearing shoes and smelling of sweat and blood. Loriana said she didn't see him with a knife or a gun or any drugs or property from inside the apartment. As she was driving, she asked him about the smell, and Eugene said, "I had to do it." So then she knows, obviously, you just killed someone.
Right.
But she continues driving. And once on the other side of the city, Eugene threw all the clothes that he had been wearing into a dumpster. And even though Loriana says she did not see him with a knife or a gun, he claims that he gave the knife he used to kill Yolanda to Loriana, and she disposed of it.
Okay.
So then once Curtis came to, he called 911, which was why they believe now that he must have passed out. And that's why the delay between Eugene leaving and then him calling 911. So he did not actually spend 15 minutes washing his hands and feet.
Right.
Of course, Qawmane, Eugene, and Loriana were all arrested. And in the 15 months between the murder and their arrest, Qawmane had accessed at least $90,000 in cash from Yolanda's accounts and collected on 2 life insurance policies. He proceeded to spend the money on things like guns, jewelry, clothing, shoes, a new Mustang, drugs, and even puppies.
Puppies?
Yes.
He doesn't seem like he should be allowed to own puppies.
No.
That's a lot of money. Aside from the puppy conversation, that's a lot of money to collect.
Yes. He also flaunted it on his YouTube channel by posting a video of him withdrawing what he claimed was $20,000 and then generously tossing it into the air while his, quote, fans scream and try to catch it.
No comment.
If you would like to see the video, it is linked in the show notes.
Of course it is.
It's quite disturbing.
Yeah.
Okay, so now to the trials. I don't have all the details, but I'm guessing that Loriana Johnson made a deal because she testified against the other 2.
I had that thought. I was just thinking to myself, there's no way she's not going to get a deal because she's going to be able to tell them so much information that's really helpful.
Yeah, and I couldn't really find any court records, appeals, anything for her. However, I do know that she was sentenced to 14 years for her part in the crime.
Oh, okay. That's a lot more than I expected.
Yeah, she did serve time, but I can't find her. She's not in the inmate search anymore. So, and she participated in the docuseries listed in my sources. So I'm sure she managed to get released early. Qawmane and Eugene faced far more charges than she did, which are rather complicated compared to what I'm used to reading, but it was interesting. So they charged Qawmane with the same things as Eugene under the theory of accountability. And both were faced with 3 counts of first-degree murder for the following. 1 count that he, quote, intentionally or knowingly shot and killed the victim while armed with a firearm. 2, that he shot and killed the victim, quote, while armed with a firearm, knowing that such an act created a strong probability of death or great bodily harm. And 3, that he shot and killed the victim, quote, while armed with a firearm during the commission of a forcible felony, i.e. the home invasion. They were then both charged with 1 count of attempted murder on Curtis Wyatt. And finally, they were both charged with home invasion by knowingly entering the dwelling and knew that 1 or more persons were present while armed with a firearm that they used.
Okay.
Both men were found guilty, but their sentencings varied slightly. Qawmane was sentenced to 45 years for the first-degree murder, 25 years for the attempted murder, and 29 years for the home invasion. Whereas Eugene was sentenced to 50 years for the first-degree murder, 25 years for the attempted murder, and only 25 years for the home invasion. So it was basically the same amount of time. Qawmane got 99 years, Eugene got 100, but they just made it
slightly different based
on their roles. So Qawmane got more for the home invasion because he made it possible for the home invasion, etc. According to Inmate Search, they're both still in prison, of course, but the inmate records show that Qawmane will be eligible for parole in 2058, but Eugene won't be eligible until 2080. Now, my guess is because from the moment Eugene was incarcerated, he continuously racked up several disciplinary infractions, including 14 infractions for public masturbation throughout the prison.
Boo.
Or throughout jail. So then at his trial, they're like, okay.
Bruh, keep it in your pants.
Both, of course, have appealed their convictions, mostly over fairly typical things like ineffective counsel. But I did find some of this interesting. Eugene's appeal included a claim that the trial court displayed animosity toward him when it, quote, endorsed brutal and unlawful treatment by prison staff and sexual violence at the hands of other inmates if he should masturbate in front of others while incarcerated. I'm sorry.
Okay, so to break that down, he's saying, well, it's your fault that other people are having to deal with me.
So to break that down, so the state then argued in his appeal, the state's argument was that the court's comment on that matter. So like I said, his infraction started before he actually went to full prison.
Right, this is in jail.
While he was in jail, he had 14 infractions for masturbating, quote, in public, but he did so in front of a public defender. He did so in front of a nurse trying to administer meds to him.
These poor people. Like, that, and we're laughing, but let's be clear. Those people that's like sexual assault. I mean,
what do you do? Like, can you imagine being the public defender and you're stuck on this case and you're like, sir, put it away.
I have to tell you, I have one of my closest friends used to be a nurse in a jail, and I'm going to have to tell her and ask her and see if she has any comments on this.
Yeah, for sure. Because I'm sure it happens. It's
sure.
Probably not the strangest thing that happens. But come on now. So his appeal was like saying that the court treated me unfairly because basically, according to the state, the court commented warning him. They're like, quote, it was nothing more than a warning to the defendant that his sexual misbehavior in the jail must not continue when he gets to prison, because basically they were just acknowledging that, like, when you go to prison, like, you're not going to get the treatment that you got in jail.
No.
And when you do stuff like that in prison, Lord help you.
Yeah. Then you're doing it to yourself, my guy.
Yeah. So there you go. That was the most interesting part of his appeal. Qawmane's appeal included claims that he was unlawfully detained during that traffic stop that I mentioned, and that the trial court erred by allowing videos recovered from his cell phone to be entered to show motive, such as him throwing money around, etc.
Right.
All of their appeals have been denied, and their sentences have been affirmed up to this point. So all I can say is let's hope Qawmane learned some sort of lesson in all of this, and Eugene has stopped masturbating in front of others.
Hopefully Eugene has learned to zip it up.
Yes. I would hope so.
That is truly something I've never seen in a court file.
Yeah.
So that's a new one for us.
It was interesting, for sure. So it's all linked in the show notes under sources if you'd like to read the interesting appeals and whatnot yourself. Yeah,
I will. That is something that I think I need to read.
it was fascinating.
Well, thank you for bringing us this very this case was so like I said earlier, I was like so conflicted as to where I thought this was going to go.
Yeah. It's a wild
Yeah.
one.
But it wrapped up in a little
Yeah.
with a bow. It's
Yeah.
all yeah, wow.
And poor Yolanda just
I
tried to
know.
be a
and
good
she
mom.
was such a good person just helping her community, and
Yep.
Chicago was worse off.
Yep. So if you've stuck it out this far, thank you.
Thanks.
And if you'd like a shout out on social media, Facebook, Instagram,
Ooh.
etc., go ahead and comment or leave us the haircut emoji. There's one
Yeah.
of people you can choose, female, male, I don't care. I'm assuming she had more female clients, but you choose. But the haircut emoji for
Yeah.
Yolanda being a stylist.
And let us know your thoughts on the episode. I've been doing a new thing with Sunday shoutouts where if you leave something interesting, I'm going to just post your comment on our stories too, because our last few cases have had lots and lots of traction. You guys have had so much to say, and I just wanted to, make sure everybody else got to see it. So if you have something interesting or any sort of insights, go ahead and leave that too.
Yep.
And I think that's it for today.
That's it for today. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Till next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, guys. Find us on Instagram and TikTok at Burden of Proof Pod and email us at burdenofproofpod@gmail.com.